Hi everyone, I'm Dale Smith, aka Journo Dale, and we're here to talk about Canadian politics. This week, I only got one question in the mailbag, and it's from Fanny Price on Twitter, who assures me she's not a bot, and says, the REIT model of private ownership of seniors' residences as an investment opportunity is now problematic because profits always outweigh health considerations. Is there any hope of wide-scale reform, particularly in Ontario where the Premier is in developers' pockets? Well, yes, REIT, Real Estate Investment Trust. I think we're going to get a lot of really interesting questions going forward about how we're funding and regulating seniors, and not just seniors residences, but all long-term care facilities, because this also includes people with certain disabilities who need to be in care facilities. And one of the things we're going to have to really kind of pay attention to is the fact that we knew this was coming. For 17 years, these kind of facilities sat on reports that said, hey, the next time there's a global pandemic like SARS, we're going to need to be prepared, and that's going to mean all of these changes. And they never really happened. And there's this kind of complacency around it. But not only that, I think it's also just this problem in our society where, to coin a phrase, and I'm actually quoting, I believe it's Heather Malik in this, is that we worship on the altar of cheap. And I think that's one of the things that really becomes apparent when it comes to long-term care facilities. And, we want these facilities, but we don't want to pay very much to have to, for people who need to live there. And then when we add on top of that, the fact that these are being used for investment purposes, means that a lot of the workers who are there, nobody wants to give them enough hours so that they get benefits. So they wind up working in 2 or 3 different facilities, and so on and so on. And that's really become laid bare in the last couple of months as to how that became vectors of transmission for COVID-19. Early on, we saw a couple of provinces mandate orders like BC did, where it was, if you're a care worker, you work in one facility and not others, because that way then you're not cross-contaminating, essentially, between facilities. So what is this going to mean going forward? I think there is going to be some kind of a reckoning, particularly in Ontario and Quebec, given just the sheer number of deaths that have happened in these 2 provinces in long-term care facilities. But part of this, I fear, is kind of structural, because we are in this, our society is built around doing things on the cheap. And that has its, and it's that whole thing is coming to roost in these facilities. And, the Prime Minister is, keeps getting asked, are we going to put these under the Canada Health Act? Is this going to be something where the federal government exerts more jurisdiction, which is problematic, because these kinds of things are explicitly provincial jurisdiction, and the Canada Health Act doesn't really work the way a lot of people think it does. And if there is federal money for this kind of thing, and they have attempted that. I mean, that was one of the things when the Liberals came in 2015, was trying to tie certain pots of healthcare money to long-term care facilities, as well as home care and things like that. And it's not an easy thing, because the provinces very rarely like being told what to do. And we're seeing situations like we're in right now, where suddenly they're crying to the federal government for help, and, call in the army to these long-term care facilities because they can't manage them anymore. Yeah, that is going to require some kind of a reckoning, but I don't know what that's going to look like once we're on the far side of this, because we've had inquiries and inquests into these kinds of things before. Most recently, Ontario just had one in, it's the Elizabeth Wethofer, I believe is the last name. I'm not pronouncing it correctly. Anyway, she was that nurse who basically killed a bunch of residents in these different care facilities for over years. And when she was finally caught and sentenced, you know, they had an inquiry into ensuring that this kind of thing couldn't happen again. But suddenly we're in COVID-19 and all of these same failings within these institutions are still there. There hasn't been enough actual change. And it's kind of pessimistic on my part to just kind of at this bit of a sense of resignation that unless we as a society realize that we need to actually invest some real dollars into fixing this situation, and for, you know, people who place family into these facilities, that they have, you know, that there is a cost to it, as well as, you know, just on a societal level, is this something that we're going to devote more tax dollars to, and you know, ensuring that these are public and not private facilities? Will that be any better? Possibly yes, possibly no, because we all know that there are issues with our healthcare system and it being so slow to change, even though there are simple fixes that happen that create efficiencies and so on, but they're so slow to get adopted across the system. Because of all the kind of structural problems within it. So I guess I'm just kind of talking around this same point here, is that yes, there's going to have to be some kind of a reckoning, but it's going to require a lot of political will and just societal will to ensure that we change and not, you know, 6 months down the road get bored of it, get complacent, and start cheaping out again. So that's going to be on all of us to really kind of hold people's feet to the fire on this once we're on the far side of this pandemic. And that's everything for this week. Join us again next week for some more Canadian politics. I'm Dale Smith. That's at journo_Dale on Twitter. And don't forget to like the video, share, subscribe, and support us on Patreon. Thanks, everyone.